I was never the kind of guy to raise my voice. Not in arguments, not in meetings, not even when someone cut me off in traffic. I always figured silence was its own kind of power, more unnerving than yelling, more enduring than a lecture. My name's Jeremy, I'm 34, and for most of my life, I've been the easy son, the reliable one, the one who gets the call when someone's moving, or needs help fixing a roof, or can't quite cover the mortgage this month. I'd always been that guy, until recently. I was born and raised in a middle-class neighborhood just outside of Austin, Texas. My dad was a mechanic and my mom worked part-time at a dental office, though she treated her unpaid role as a household general manager like a full-time position. My younger brother, Kyle, is 31 and married with 2 kids. Kyle's always been, well, Kyle, charming, funny, a little impulsive, and, if I'm being honest, used to getting away with stuff. Ever since we were kids, he had this uncanny ability to duck out of consequences. Break something? Jeremy will fix it. Forget a birthday? Jeremy will cover. Get a girl pregnant? Jeremy will help you figure out the paperwork. And I did. For years. I don't say all that to sound noble. It's just what I was taught, by example mostly. My parents, especially my mom, had this way of making Kyle's problems feel like family problems. We all need to support each other, she'd say. Which really meant, you need to support Kyle. I can't count the number of times I gave up weekends, paid off late bills, or stayed up fixing something Kyle messed up because he has so much on his plate. And you're single. You have the time. For a while, I didn't mind. I made decent money in IT. I wasn't married, didn't have kids, and I've always been the type who finds peace in being useful. But something started shifting after my dad retired. He got crankier, less patient, more vocal about things that used to be said in polite tones. And my mom, she doubled down on her role as martyr and family strategist. Suddenly, every dinner conversation became about Kyle's kids, Kyle's job, Kyle's stress levels. I tried to bring up a new project at work or something I was excited about, and I'd get a polite nod before she circled back to how little Emma had a fever last week. Poor thing. One night about 6 months ago, we were all at my parents' place for Sunday dinner, a tradition that used to be cozy but had recently turned into a weekly obligation. Kyle was complaining about daycare costs, again. His wife, Marissa, was scrolling on her phone while their toddler screamed over a YouTube video that was too loud on the iPad. My dad had tuned out with the TV, but my mom was laser-focused on Kyle like he was confessing to a crime and she was the priest. Meanwhile, I was sitting there, having spent my Saturday helping my dad install new gutters, free labor, of course, and no one had even bothered to say thanks. I asked, casually, have you thought about part-time daycare or maybe a nanny share? There are some affordable options if you do a little research. The room went quiet. Kyle looked at me like I'd just suggested they sell the baby. Marissa rolled her eyes. Not everyone has time to scroll Reddit for parenting hacks, Jeremy. My mom jumped in before I could respond. Jeremy, sweetie, you wouldn't understand. You don't have children. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. I'm just saying, maybe there's a middle ground between struggling and dropping 5 figures on a daycare center, I said. My mom's voice shifted into that soft but condescending tone she reserves for when she's about to say something she knows is going to sting. Your brother's family comes first. You should be used to that by now. My dad, without looking away from the TV, mumbled, she's right. I remember the moment so vividly. The way everyone kept eating like nothing had happened. Like that sentence was normal. Like I was some second-tier family member who just existed to hold things up when they fell. I didn't get angry. I didn't slam my fork or storm out. I just smiled and said, sure. That night, I drove home in silence. No music, no podcasts. Just the soft hum of my engine and a sharp, growing clarity in my chest. I replayed the moment over and over. You should be used to that by now. The words hit differently each time, like a door slowly creaking open in my head, revealing a room I'd never dared to enter, the one where I stopped carrying their weight. It didn't happen all at once, but that dinner lit the fuse. And once it started burning, I began noticing every little imbalance, every tiny insult I'd let slide, every assumption they made about my time, my money, my role in the family. I realized I had let it happen, enabled it, even by never pushing back. The first real test came a few weeks later when my dad called me on a Thursday evening. Hey, Gia, he said, sounding casual. You busy this weekend? Kind of. I said, even though I wasn't. Why? Got a bit of an issue with the plumbing out back. Thought maybe you could take a look. Kyle's working all weekend. There it was again. That invisible equation where Kyle's unavailability somehow equaled my responsibility. I paused. I can send you the number of a great plumber I've used. Fair rates. Does good work. Silence. My dad cleared his throat. Figured you could save us some money. I've got plans, I said. But seriously, this guy's solid. I'll text you. We exchanged a few more words, none of them meaningful, and hung up. 10 minutes later, my mom texted me. Is everything okay? You've been distant. I didn't answer. That weekend, I went hiking. No cell service. No guilt. It started with a voicemail from my mom. Not a text. Not a casual call. A 3-minute voicemail. An unusual thing in a world where people barely leave 10-second ones. I'd just gotten back from the gym, my shirt still damp, water bottle clutched in one hand, when I saw the red notification blinking on my phone. Jeremy, honey, please call me back when you get this. It's about Kyle and Marissa. They're in a difficult situation and, well, your father and I are trying to help, but we don't have the means right now. I know you've been distant lately, but this is really serious. It's family. I didn't respond right away. I showered, made dinner, and let the message sit like a pebble in my shoe, something I could ignore until it became too irritating. The next morning, another message. This time from Kyle. Just a single line. Hey man, can we talk? It's kinda urgent. Still, I didn't reply. Not yet. I already knew the pattern. Urgent turned into, we just need a bit of help, which turned into me solving whatever crisis was too inconvenient for them to deal with. And I was tired. Tired of being the scaffolding they climbed on when everything else fell apart. It wasn't until Sunday evening that I finally called my mom. Her voice was tight, controlled, but there was a thread of panic weaving through it. Kyle's in trouble, she said. Real trouble. I stayed silent, letting her explain. Apparently, Kyle had taken out a personal loan last year, something to tide them over, while Marissa went on maternity leave. He hadn't told anyone. And then another loan. And then a credit card. Long story short, they were buried under nearly $40,000 of debt. The interest was suffocating. They were months behind on their mortgage, and the bank had started sending foreclosure warnings. We didn't know, she kept saying. He didn't tell us until yesterday. I think he was ashamed. I wanted to say ashamed? Kyle, really? But I didn't. I just listened. We're going to help them cover the mortgage for the next couple of months, she said, her voice softening like she was tiptoeing toward a request I already saw coming. But we don't have the savings to cover everything. And the kids, they're so young, Jeremy. There it was. I let the silence hang long enough for her to feel it. I understand, I finally said. I'll think about it. Thank you, she whispered, already assuming my help was a given. I told your father you'd come through. But I didn't come through. Not this time. Instead, I did something unthinkable. Nothing. Days passed. The group chat was uncharacteristically quiet. No memes from Marissa, no guilt-laced messages from Mom. Then a text popped up from Kyle. Seriously? You're just gonna ignore us? I didn't reply. Another followed. Mom said you'd help. We're drowning here. This isn't just about us. It's about the kids. Still, I said nothing. 2 more days went by. Then came the dinner. I hadn't planned to go, but I knew if I skipped it, I'd never hear the end of it. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted to see what they'd do when I showed up and didn't play my part. When I walked into my parents' house, the energy was off. Stiff. Mom greeted me with a forced smile, like a hostess who'd just been told the health inspector was in the lobby. Dad barely looked up from his recliner. Kyle was already there, arms crossed, eyes dark, Marissa beside him with a tight jaw and silent rage. Dinner was awkward, tense. Conversation was a minefield no one dared to cross. About halfway through the meal, my mom folded her napkin delicately and cleared her throat. So, she said, have you had a chance to think about what we discussed? I sipped my water. Yeah. Everyone looked at me. I'm not going to bail Kyle out. You'd have thought I'd slapped a baby. My mom blinked. Excuse me. I said no, I repeated. Calm. Steady. I'm not covering his loans. I'm not paying his mortgage. I'm not fixing this. The room erupted. Kyle stood up. Are you kidding me? After everything we've done for you. Everything you've done for me. I laughed once, incredulous. You mean the years I've spent cleaning up your messes? Paying your bills? Missing vacations to help Dad replace a roof because you had work? Taking care of things that were never mine to fix? My mom raised her voice. Jeremy, lower your tone. This is a family matter. I am family, I snapped. At least I thought I was. But you've made it clear, over and over, that Kyle's family comes first. Remember? You should be used to that by now. Well, guess what? I am. The silence was deafening. My dad, who rarely chimed in unless it was to side with Mom, looked at me with narrowed eyes. You're being selfish. That word, selfish. It hit me like a slap. I leaned back in my chair, suddenly exhausted. No, I said. I'm being done. That dinner ended without dessert. A week passed. Then two. I stopped hearing from them altogether. No texts. No calls. The group chat dried up. Birthdays passed without mention. Even my mom's usual updates about her garden or the neighbor's dog stopped showing up in my inbox. The silence was a punishment. I knew that. A cold shoulder meant to guilt me back into line. It didn't work. What they didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this for months. Long before Kyle's financial crash, I'd been talking to a therapist, working through years of quiet resentment and internalized guilt, learning how to set boundaries, learning how to say no. I hadn't expected the moment to come so soon or so loud, but once it arrived, I knew I was ready. Then came the betrayal. I was sitting at my desk, finishing up a report for work, when I got a call from my HR department. Hey, Jeremy, just a heads up, the rep said, sounding awkward. Someone tried to access your employment records last week. They claimed to be you, but the info didn't match. We flagged it as a fraud attempt. My stomach dropped. Do you know who it was? I asked. We can't say for sure, he said. But they had your name, address, even your work ID. Just didn't pass the final verification steps. We've locked your file for now. That night, I sat on my couch, phone in hand, piecing it together. I checked my email. Someone had requested a password reset for one of my bank accounts. Another for a credit card I rarely used. I checked my credit report. 2 hard inquiries. One attempt to open a new line of credit in my name. It didn't take long to trace it. The IP address linked back to an account that had once been associated with my parents' home Wi-Fi. Kyle. I felt my hands go cold. The next morning, I drove to the bank, froze all my accounts, updated passwords, placed fraud alerts. I filed a police report, not because I expected them to knock down doors, but because I needed a record. I needed to draw a line in ink, not just words. Still, I said nothing to my family. Not yet. I waited. A week passed. Then Kyle called. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail, his voice shaking. I messed up, he said. Look, I didn't mean to cause any harm. We were desperate, okay? I thought if I could just get a loan in your name, just temporarily, we could catch up and pay it back. No one would have known. I sat on my couch, staring at the wall, listening to him justify identity theft like it was borrowing a shirt without asking. The next day, I got a call from my mom. Her voice was tight, defensive. Kyle told me everything, she said. He was just trying to protect his family. You can't blame him for that. I nearly laughed. Protect them? By stealing from me? It wasn't stealing, she snapped. He didn't go through with it. Nothing happened. And now you're dragging the police into it. I didn't respond. Not to her. Not anymore. I hung up. And I finally knew. This wasn't about money. Or family. Or helping someone through a hard time. This was about loyalty. And they had never been loyal to me. So when the fallout came, when everything came crashing down and they realized I wasn't just setting boundaries but shutting doors, I made a choice that would change everything. And I did it without raising my voice. The hardest part wasn't Kyle trying to steal my identity. It wasn't even my mother defending him after the fact, or my father's deafening silence. It was the quiet realization, creeping in like fog under the door, that I had never really been part of the family I thought I belonged to. I was a convenience. A safety net. A spare tire they kept in the trunk, forgotten until the wheels came off. After I filed the police report, everything went still. The silence that followed wasn't like the one after a fight. It wasn't dramatic or stormy. It was sterile, hollow, like walking through a house that used to feel warm but now echoed with every footstep. I had blocked Kyle, stopped responding to Mom's texts. And Dad, I don't think he ever reached out again. Not once. I'd always imagined that drawing a line would feel empowering. Like in the movies, when someone finally breaks free and walks off into the sunset. But in real life, the sunsets take their time. The sky turns gray first. For the first time in years, my Sundays were free. No more being summoned to fix the garage, or help move furniture, or babysit Kyle's kids while he ran errands that somehow always took 4 hours. But instead of feeling relieved, I felt off balance. Like I'd just stepped off a boat and the ground was still swaying. I didn't know what to do with the quiet. At first, I filled the silence with work. I took on more projects at the firm, stayed late, volunteered for the tasks no one wanted. I told myself it was productivity. In reality, it was avoidance. Avoiding the loneliness that came from removing an entire branch of your life. Avoiding the gnawing question in the back of my mind. Had I overreacted? But every time I thought about that voicemail, Kyle's panicked rationalizations, my mom's quiet manipulations, I felt the answer settle in my chest. No, I hadn't overreacted. I'd let it go too long. Still, the doubt lingered. About 3 weeks after the identity theft incident, I came home from work and found a handwritten letter in my mailbox. No stamp, just tucked inside the box. I recognized my mom's cursive immediately. I stood on my porch for a full minute before opening it. Inside were 3 pages, carefully worded, painfully passive-aggressive, and utterly devoid of apology. She wrote about how families are meant to forgive, how everyone makes mistakes, and how some people have trouble asking for help the right way. She never mentioned what Kyle did. Never once used the word wrong. The letter ended with, "We're always here if you decide to come home. The kids miss their uncle." I read it twice. Then I folded it neatly, walked inside, and dropped it into the shredder. That night, something broke. Not dramatically, not with tears or yelling, just a quiet snap. A release of tension I didn't even know I was holding. I stood in my living room and looked around at the space that was mine, truly mine, and realized I didn't owe anyone anything. I had spent years trying to earn love that came with conditions. It was time to stop. The shift didn't happen overnight, but it started with small decisions. I stopped waiting for their messages. I deleted the old family group chat from my phone. I took the photos of Kyle's kids off my fridge, not out of spite, but because I didn't want to feel guilt every time I reached for milk. And slowly, I started building something new. I went back to therapy, more regularly this time. At first, it was just to unload, to process. But soon, the sessions turned into something deeper. We talked about self-worth, about the difference between obligation and love. My therapist, a calm, steady guy named Marcus, helped me recognize patterns I hadn't seen before. How I'd always been the fixer in every relationship, romantic or otherwise. How I'd learned early on that love was earned by being useful. People like you, he said one afternoon, tend to confuse loyalty with self-sacrifice. But loyalty without reciprocity is servitude. That hit me hard. So I started experimenting with saying no in other parts of my life. At work, I stopped picking up the slack for that one coworker who always forgot deadlines. I took a real vacation, solo trip to Seattle, where I hiked and read and didn't check email once. I signed up for a cooking class, of all things. I'd always told myself I didn't have time. Turns out, I just didn't have permission. And then something unexpected happened. I started to feel good. Like, genuinely good. Not just not stressed or less anxious, but clear, light. I laughed more, slept better. My apartment felt more like home. I even reconnected with a few old college friends, people I'd drifted away from when families started consuming my weekends. We met for drinks, caught up, made plans without needing anyone's permission. Around that time, something shifted at work too. One of the VPs noticed my recent projects. Apparently, my increased focus hadn't gone unnoticed and invited me to lead a new tech initiative. It was a big deal. Bigger salary, more visibility, my own team. I accepted without hesitation. The raise was substantial. I used some of the extra income to do something I'd been putting off for years. I bought a condo. Nothing huge, but modern, bright, with big windows and a balcony that overlooked the city skyline. I furnished it slowly, carefully, choosing pieces that made me feel calm. I even splurged on a ridiculous espresso machine that made me feel like a barista every morning. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. Then, one morning about 6 months after the fallout, I got a message on LinkedIn. It was from Marissa. Not a message, exactly. A connection request. No note. Just a request. I stared at it for a long time. Then I clicked ignore. That same week, I got another letter in the mail. This time from my parents. Handwritten again, but shorter. It read, "We heard about your promotion. Your father and I are proud of you. The family's going through a rough time right now. If you're open to it, We'd love to sit down and talk things through. Maybe dinner? No apology. No acknowledgement of what had been done. No mention of the police report. The identity theft. The fact that I had every legal and moral right to cut them off for good. I folded the letter and set it aside. I didn't shred this one. Not yet. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the white-hot way I'd been that night after dinner. Not even in the bitter, simmering way I'd felt in the months that followed. I was just done. Not with life. Not with growth. But with them. With people who saw my value only when they needed something. Who mistook silence for agreement and love for obligation. The truth was, I was rising. And they didn't know how to handle that. Still, I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. Because families like mine, they don't go quietly. Revenge wasn't something I fantasized about. Not at first. When everything fell apart with my family, I wasn't thinking about payback. I was thinking about survival. About keeping my sanity intact. About finding a version of myself that didn't rely on their crumbs of validation to feel whole. But something shifted the day I read that letter. The one where my parents congratulated me on my promotion as if nothing had happened. As if we were just distant, not fractured. As if Kyle hadn't tried to steal my identity. As if they hadn't blamed me for protecting myself. It was the audacity that got me. They'd burned the bridge and now acted like they could waltz across it again because they needed something. I knew that tone in their letter too well. It was polite on the surface, but beneath it was calculation. An unspoken assumption that I'd always come around. That I was still that same reliable Jeremy, the good son, who bailed them out, smoothed things over, played peacemaker. But I wasn't that guy anymore. And now that I had some distance, I could see things I hadn't seen before. Patterns. Weak points. Leverage. I wasn't looking for petty revenge. I wasn't going to prank call them or slash their tires. No, I wanted something quieter. Something cleaner. I wanted consequences. Not just for Kyle, but for everyone who helped him stay the golden child while I played the family mule. So I started planning. It began with information. I still had access to a lot more than they realized. Old emails. Shared logins. Dropbox folders from when I used to help manage Kyle's freelance work during his startup phase, which, in hindsight, was mostly him pitching bad ideas and me doing the spreadsheets. One afternoon, I logged into a cloud drive he hadn't used in years and found receipts. Literal receipts. Invoices. Bank transfers. Venmo screenshots. He had funded parts of his parenting expenses with small business grants meant for first-time entrepreneurs. Problem was, Kyle hadn't launched anything. He'd used the money, about $14,000 in total, for household repairs, car payments, and once, a vacation to Puerto Vallarta that he told my parents was sponsored by work. I started screenshotting, saving, organizing. Not for blackmail, not even to go legal. I just wanted to know what kind of man I was dealing with now that the blindfold was off. Then there was my dad. While he'd always played second fiddle to my mom when it came to emotional manipulation, he had his own role, the silent enforcer. The provider, who used his stoicism to sidestep accountability. I never expected him to say sorry, but I had once expected him to protect me. Instead, he'd chosen Kyle. More than once. The most damning example came 2 years prior, during one of Kyle's business launches. He had convinced our dad to co-sign a lease on a commercial space for a pop-up cafe concept. He'd wanted me involved, but I was knee-deep in work and wary of the whole idea. Still, I helped him draft the lease agreement and warned Dad, in writing, that if Kyle bailed, the landlord could come after him. Kyle bailed. Of course he did. The cafe never launched. The space sat empty for 6 months before the landlord sued for breach of contract. My father paid the settlement quietly, and they all swore never to talk about it again. Except they did talk about it. To me. Every family dinner afterward came with subtle digs about how I should have done more to guide Kyle, or should have taken a bigger role in the cafe. Like his failure was my burden. Like their silence bought my complicity. And now? Now they wanted me back at the table. So I decided to give them exactly what they asked for, on my terms. The first step was easy. I replied to my mother's letter with a text. Thanks for the kind words. I've been thinking about the past, too. Maybe we should talk. I'd like to come to dinner next week. Just the 4 of us. No Kyle or Marissa. She responded within minutes. Of course, sweetheart. We'd love that. Sunday at 6? Perfect. But this wasn't a reunion. It was reconnaissance. I spent the rest of the week preparing. Pulling together old documents. Drafting notes. even printing out some of Kyle's more questionable business purchases that I discovered buried in his Dropbox. I didn't plan on showing them. Not yet. But I wanted them on hand, just in case. Sunday arrived, and with it, that old familiar tightness in my chest. I hadn't seen my parents in person since the night of the dinner. The last time I'd sat at their table, I told them I was done. And I'd meant it. But this time, I walked in on my own terms. The living room looked the same. Family photos. My mom's obsessive doilies. That weird bowl of fake fruit that had never moved an inch since 2003. But the energy was different. Stiffer. Like they didn't quite know how to act. "Jeremy," my mom said, her smile a little too tight. "You look good." "Thanks," I said, handing her a bottle of wine I didn't intend to drink. My dad stood, shook my hand. "It's good to see you, son." Son. That word felt hollow in his mouth now. We sat down to dinner. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, something green and overcooked. Conversation was awkward but polite. They asked about work. I gave them surface-level answers. They tiptoed around anything deeper, like someone walking across cracked ice. Then, halfway through the meal, my mom brought it up. "We know things have been tense," she said, "and we've made mistakes. But we really hope we can put it all behind us." I looked at her. "Have you put it behind you?" She blinked. "Excuse me. Have you even acknowledged what Kyle did?" I asked. "What you defended?" Because I haven't heard a single word of accountability. My dad stiffened. "Jeremy." "No," I said. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to be clear." I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. I didn't open it. Just placed it gently on the table. In here is everything Kyle's done that could get him audited. Or worse. Money he took. Lies he told. Things I helped him cover for. Back when I thought he was just struggling, not scamming. My mom's face went pale. "I'm not threatening you," I continued. "I'm informing you. Because I'm done being the one who keeps secrets to protect other people's reputations." My father's voice dropped. "What do you want from us?" "Nothing," I said. "That's the point. I don't want anything from you anymore. But I do want you to understand that if Kyle tries anything else, if he opens an account in my name, applies for a loan, uses my old address, I'll go public. I'll go legal. And I won't flinch." My mom looked like she wanted to cry. I stood up, folded my napkin. "Oh, and you should probably tell Kyle that Dropbox autosyncs to multiple devices. If he thinks his past is buried, he's mistaken." I left before dessert. And for the first time in years, I felt tall. That was only the beginning. Over the next few months, I quietly made moves. I reached out to an old friend, Amanda, who worked in grant auditing. Told her, casually, that someone I knew might have misused small business funds. She couldn't act on it directly, but she pointed me to a third-party whistleblower site where I could report it anonymously, with documentation. I filed the report. I didn't name names, but I didn't have to. The attached receipts did all the work. Then I got my credit legally frozen and set up fraud alerts on all my accounts. I even hired a financial advisor, real one, not some Instagram guru, who helped me restructure my finances in a way that made it impossible for anyone to open anything new without biometric verification. I was locking every door Kyle had ever crept through. And the best part? I didn't tell them a thing. 3 months after that dinner, the game was set. My family didn't realize it yet, but the pieces were already moving, slowly, quietly, almost imperceptibly at first. But every choice I made since cutting them off had been deliberate. I wasn't trying to destroy anyone. I just wanted the truth to hit them where it hurt. Their pride. Their illusion of control. Their belief that they could act without consequences, just because they wore the word family like armor. I wasn't angry anymore. That was the strangest part. The heat was gone. No more pacing in my apartment, rehearsing what I should have said. No more rewriting old conversations in my head. That stage had passed. I was cold now. Focused. Ready. It all began with a phone call I didn't answer. Then another. Then a string of voicemails from my mom that grew increasingly desperate. "Jeremy, please call us. It's about Kyle. Something's happened." I didn't call back. Instead, I waited until the weekend and drove by my parents' neighborhood, something I hadn't done since I moved into my new condo. I didn't stop. I didn't get out of the car. I just drove slowly, windows down, letting the silence settle over me. Their lawn was uncut. The mailbox overflowing. Something was off. 2 days later, I got a message from Amanda, the friend who'd pointed me to the whistleblower site. She didn't say much, just one sentence. You didn't hear it from me, but your tip hit the right desk. That same day, a formal audit was opened on Kyle's business grant history. It was slow-moving at first. Government wheels don't turn fast. But once they started, they didn't stop. Especially not when they smelled fraud. The $14,000 I had documented wasn't even the half of it. Turns out, Kyle had applied for multiple grants over 3 years. Different business names. Different LLCs. All registered under slightly different addresses, some even using our parents' home as a business headquarters. What he didn't realize was that all of it left a trail. Especially when you double-dip into government money and claim you're launching 3 separate businesses while posting vacation photos on Facebook. He'd gotten sloppy. And sloppiness and fraud doesn't just get you in trouble, it gets you noticed. When the auditors came knocking, he tried to play dumb. Said he thought the grants were for general support, that he hadn't read the fine print, that the businesses had pivoted or failed due to market conditions. But they weren't buying it. Neither were the banks. Apparently, Kyle had taken out a personal loan last year using one of the fake LLCs as collateral, claiming it was backed by a small business grant. Once the audit hit, the bank froze his accounts pending investigation. That included his checking, savings, and credit lines. He couldn't pay the mortgage. Not this time. And for once, nobody was bailing him out. A week after the audit began, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was Marissa. I know you think you're punishing him, but you're destroying all of us. The kids are scared. They don't understand what's happening. I stared at it for a long time. The kids. Always the shield. I didn't respond. Because I wasn't the one who destroyed their family. Kyle had done that the moment he forged my name on a credit app. The moment he lied to my parents. The moment he used his own children as emotional blackmail for years. 2 days later, I got a knock on my door. It was my dad. I didn't even know how he'd gotten my new address. Maybe from a mutual contact. Maybe he'd followed me home. I didn't care. I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. He looked smaller. Not physically, but spiritually. His posture was hunched, his eyes tired. He didn't speak right away. I just wanted to talk, he said. I folded my arms. Then talk. He sighed, glanced down at his shoes. Your mother's not doing well. She's been stressed. She's not sleeping. And Kyle, well, you probably know what's happening. I know he's being investigated for fraud, I said evenly. I know he used your house as a fake business address. I know he borrowed money he never had any intention of paying back. Dad flinched. Just slightly. He made mistakes. Mistakes. I echoed. Or choices. He looked up, met my eyes. Why are you doing this? That question. That damn question. I'm not doing anything, I said. For once in my life, I'm just not cleaning up the mess. That's all it took to bring everything down. He didn't respond. He just stood there. And I could see it, finally, in his face. The weight of it. The truth sinking in. The realization that without me propping up the facade, the whole house of cards had collapsed. After a long silence, he said, I didn't know what Kyle had done. Not all of it. You didn't want to know? I said. Because it was easier to pretend. To believe I'd always be there to catch him. To cover for him. To fix it. He nodded slowly. You're right. That stunned me. Not the words themselves, but how hollow they sounded. Like someone reciting a line they barely understood. Tell your wife, I said. I hope she gets some rest. But don't come here again. Then I closed the door. No slamming. No anger. Just done. In the weeks that followed, the fallout grew. Kyle's audit escalated into a full investigation. He was charged with misuse of government funds, which meant potential jail time. But he took a plea deal that required full repayment and 5 years of probation. The money? Gone. He'd spent it. Every last dollar. They had to sell their car. Then the house. Marissa's parents took her and the kids in. Kyle moved into a small apartment on the edge of town. My mom called once more. I didn't answer. Instead, I sent her one message. I'm not angry anymore, but I'm not coming back. Then I blocked her. They weren't used to consequences. Not real ones. Not ones that couldn't be guilt away with a pot roast and a hug. But they were living with them now. Every bill. Every call from a debt collector. Every awkward conversation with neighbors who knew. As for me, I was thriving. The project I led at work had launched ahead of schedule and under budget. My boss brought me into meetings I used to sit outside of. I was being invited to speak at conferences, something I never imagined doing. I'd started dating again. Slowly. Cautiously. But this time, I wasn't choosing people who needed saving. I was choosing people who stood on their own 2 feet. I hosted a dinner party in my condo for a few close friends. Good food, music, laughter, no family drama. Just people who respected me for me, not what I could do for them. At the end of the night, I stood on my balcony, drink in hand, watching the city lights flicker like tiny stars. I wasn't angry. I wasn't broken. I was free. And for the first time in my life, I finally understood something I'd spent decades ignoring. Just because someone shares your blood doesn't mean they deserve your loyalty. Family isn't who you're born to. It's who shows up. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. If you told me 5 years ago that I'd build a multi-million-dollar tech company out of a borrowed laptop and a half-eaten protein bar, I would have laughed in your face. Not because I didn't think I could do it, but because back then, I still believed my family would be proud of me, that they'd support me, that they'd see me. My name's Aaron. I'm 23 now, but this all started when I was 19, 2 days before my final exams, when my dad came into my room without knocking and dropped a bombshell that would change everything. Not just how I saw him, but how I saw myself. To backtrack a little, I was the quiet kid growing up. Not shy, just focused. I liked building stuff. Machines, programs, games. I was that weird kid who dismantled our toaster just to see how it worked, and then actually fixed it better. I didn't throw tantrums. I didn't party. I didn't ask for much. My younger brother Tyler, on the other hand, was a force of nature. Loud, charming, constantly demanding attention like it owed him money. He played every sport for exactly 2 weeks before quitting, wrecked 2 of our cars before turning 17, and still somehow got praised for being energetic. I was too serious. He was finding himself. Classic golden child versus the reliable one. Our dad, Jim, leaned hard into that dynamic. Tyler could do no wrong, and I was expected to handle everything on my own. If I ever brought up the unfairness of it, Dad would wave it off with a laugh. You're the smart one, Aaron. He needs more help. That was the excuse for everything. When I got into a top university on partial scholarship, I had to pick up part-time jobs to pay off the rest. Tyler got a brand new car for his high school graduation, even though he barely passed and had 0 plans after. It's motivational, Dad said. Maybe it'll keep him out of trouble. By my final year, I had scraped together enough savings and birthday money to buy myself a secondhand laptop. It wasn't fancy, but it got the job done. That laptop was my lifeline. Every project, every assignment, every prototype I built for my senior portfolio lived on it. I kept it spotless, updated, always charged. It wasn't just a tool. It was proof I could make something for myself, without needing anyone's handouts. Then came that afternoon, 2 days before my final exams. I was editing my capstone presentation, headphones in, when the door swung open. No knock. Just Dad, arms crossed, standing in my doorway like he owned the air. Hey, Aaron, he said casually. Just a heads up, we sold your laptop this morning. I stared at him. I thought he was joking. I actually laughed. What? Tyler's birthday's next week. He's been wanting a gaming setup. Figured he deserves it. You know, to relax and unwind a little. My brain froze. I felt my heart start pounding in my ears. You sold my laptop? My school laptop? The one with all my files. Dad shrugged, like I'd asked if he wanted a sandwich. Yeah, you've got your exams coming up, right? I figured you'd back stuff up somewhere. I hadn't. I'd been working around the clock, barely sleeping. There wasn't time to do a proper backup, and even if I had, I didn't have extra storage lying around. That laptop was everything. How am I supposed to finish my finals? I asked, my voice cracking before I could stop it. You're resourceful, Dad said simply, already walking away. Figure it out. He didn't even look at me, just left me standing there, the walls of my room closing in like they were laughing too. I went downstairs. Tyler was in the living room, grinning like a 5-year-old with a sugar high. He was setting up a massive curved monitor, a brand new tower humming next to it, RGB lights flashing like a rave. My laptop, my scratched up, sticker-covered, dependable laptop, was nowhere in sight. You like it? He asked, not even looking at me. Dad said I needed something stress-free after all that drama with Kayla. His ex. They'd dated for 3 months, broken up because she found someone with an actual job, and Tyler had moped around the house for a week like he'd been widowed. I needed that laptop, I said quietly. He rolled his eyes. Dude, it was old. You're lucky someone even paid for it. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, stomach tight, trying to figure out what I was going to do. Professors weren't going to care that my family gutted my future because my brother needed to blow off steam in Valorant. There was no money to replace the laptop. No sympathy. No backup plan. But there was one thing I had, an offer. A weird one, from a niche tech training program in Nevada I'd applied to on a whim 6 months earlier. It wasn't college accredited, and it didn't pay, but they accepted a few people each year who showed promise, gave them hands-on experience, and connected them to real-world startups. The kind of thing you only do if you have no other options or a death wish. That night, I opened my closet, packed one backpack, just clothes, some notes, my old phone charger, and left a note on my desk. Not for them. For me. You're resourceful. Figure it out. I was gone before sunrise. For 4 years, I didn't speak to them. Not because I was angry, not just because I was angry, but because I needed distance. Space to rebuild. To stop hearing their voices in my head every time I second-guessed myself. To remember what it felt like to make a decision that didn't end with me being the backup plan. They didn't call. Didn't ask where I'd gone. Maybe they assumed I'd come crawling back once I realized how cold the world was without their roof over my head. Instead, I found something better than a roof. I found my people. But I'll get to that. Because 4 years later, just when I thought I'd finally put them in the rear view, I got an email from Dad. Subject line, "Hey buddy, need a favor." And the second I opened it, everything came rushing back. The dismissal, the shrug, the smirk on Tyler's face as he booted up his gaming rig with my dreams still loaded on the hard drive. I clicked the email, and when I saw what he was asking for, my hands clenched so tight, I nearly cracked the mouse. That was the moment I knew it was time. Not to reconnect, not to forgive, but to respond. And this time, they'd hear me loud and clear. But not in words. Not at first. Because what I sent back was louder than anything I could have said. And that's when everything really began to unravel. "Hey buddy, need a favor." The subject line was so casual it felt like a slap. Like someone showing up after 4 years of silence with a smile and a hand outstretched, not to shake yours, but to take something from it. I finally clicked. The message was short. Barely 2 paragraphs. No greeting, no real update, no mention of where I'd gone or what I'd done since disappearing without a trace. Just Dad's typical bluntness, dressed up as a friendly request. "Hey Aaron, hope you're doing great. I've been meaning to reach out for a while now. Tyler's getting engaged next month. Yep, big news. We're throwing a party for him and Chelsea at the Lakeside Event Hall. Nothing crazy, but it's going to be a big night for the family, and we'd love to have your support. Everyone's chipping in. Think you could help out with some of the expenses? Let me know. Anything helps. Proud of you, son." I read it again. Everyone's chipping in. Everyone. I hadn't heard from a single family member in 4 years. Not when I dropped out of school. Not when I took a Greyhound across the country with $180 in my bank account and no plan other than figure it out. Not even when I got featured on a regional podcast for winning a citywide developer hackathon, the first real spark that led to my startup. But now, suddenly, I was family again. Because Tyler was getting married? I didn't reply. Not yet. I sat back in my chair, closed the email, and opened a browser tab. I searched their hometown, searched the event hall, looked up the date, scanned through Facebook posts like a detective assembling a case. Tyler's profile was private, but Chelsea's wasn't. She had posted a countdown photo. Only 38 days until I marry my best friend, followed by a picture of them holding hands in front of a Tesla. His Tesla, of course. Scrolling down, I found it, dated nearly a year ago. Can't believe it. "Thank you, Dad, for helping us start our future with this beauty. Road trips coming soon." I zoomed in. Same driveway I used to shovel in the winter while Tyler rested his back. Same smug look on Dad's face as he handed over the keys. Same patterns. Same golden child treatment. And here he was again, standing center stage, expecting everyone to orbit around his son's big moment like obedient satellites. Me included. The part that got me wasn't the Tesla. It wasn't even the party. It was the assumption that I'd just forgotten. That time had erased everything. That I'd gone from a disposable background character to a willing ATM just because they needed a few extra bucks for shrimp cocktail and string lights. I didn't respond, but the memories started flooding back faster than I could stop them. That final year of school, after I left home, was brutal. I couch surfed with a classmate for a few weeks. Ate cup noodles so often I started dreaming in sodium. I worked weekends repairing cracked phone screens at a kiosk in the mall just to afford a new secondhand laptop. I wasn't resourceful. I was desperate. But desperation builds something. Pressure, sure, but also clarity. And clarity, once it settles in, doesn't fade. Not when it's forged in the fires of betrayal. One night, I caved and called home. This was maybe 3 months after I'd left. I was sleep-deprived, overworked, one coffee away from a breakdown. I didn't even know why I was calling. Maybe I just wanted to hear someone tell me they missed me, that I mattered. Dad picked up. Oh, hey, not Aaron. Not where are you? Not are you okay? Just oh, hey. I asked if he had a few minutes. He said he was driving to a basketball game with Tyler. Can you make it quick? I told him I was struggling, that I was trying to finish my capstone on an older machine, that I was building a prototype, but the processor was too weak and the laptop kept crashing. I didn't ask for money, just if he had any old parts lying around. He used to build computers when we were younger. Our garage was full of outdated tech, wires tangled in boxes like forgotten spaghetti. There was a pause. Then, I'll check. He never did. A week later, I saw a photo on Facebook. Tyler, sitting in a new gaming chair. Triple monitor setup. LED lights under the desk like some spaceship control panel. The caption? Dad upgraded the rig. Can't wait to stream from here. I remember sitting in the dark, staring at the screen, feeling something in my chest break. Not snap, just quietly give up, like a string under too much tension. I realized then, I was never going to be seen. Not in that house. Not by him. That was the moment I truly left. Not just physically, emotionally, mentally. I stopped hoping. Back in the present, I scrolled through Chelsea's profile again and saw something new. A post from just a few hours earlier. They'd mailed out the invitations. Apparently, they were going all out. Custom calligraphy, gold foil lettering, a destination wedding plan for the fall. I wasn't invited. Of course. Just chipping in. A ghost with a checkbook. That's when the final flashback hit. The real breaking point. It wasn't the laptop. It wasn't even the call. It was the voicemail. Months later, long after I stopped reaching out. I was already deep into the Nevada program at that point. Working late nights, living in a shared basement suite with 2 other developers, barely sleeping but feeling, for the first time, like I was building something of my own. One night, I came home to find my old prepaid phone blinking with a voicemail. I hit play. It was Dad. Hey, just wanted to let you know Tyler's being considered for that new esports team. I think the laptop really helped. Good call selling it. He's really thriving. You should be proud. Anyway, just checking in. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding that phone like it might explode. You should be proud. He didn't even realize what he was saying. He sold my future, handed it to my brother, and now expected me to be proud. That night, I threw the phone out the window. Didn't even look to see where it landed. I've never told anyone that. Until now. So when the email landed 4 years later, asking for help with Tyler's engagement party, it wasn't just a favor. It was a trigger, a test, to see if I still remembered what it felt like to be invisible. But I wasn't invisible anymore. Not even close. That week, our company had been featured in a glossy tech magazine under the Startups to Watch section. We were still small, sure, but growing. Profitable. I had investors asking for meetings, podcasts asking for interviews. And there I was, front page. My name, bold and clear. My company, my story. A photo of me standing in front of our tiny San Francisco office, wearing a hoodie I bought for $8 during a clearance sale. I didn't even hesitate. I printed a copy of the magazine, folded it carefully, tucked it into a padded envelope. No note, no signature, just a single yellow post. It stuck to the front cover. I figured it out. I dropped it in the mail the next morning. And that should have been the end. But it wasn't. Because a week later, my cousin Olivia messaged me out of the blue. And what she told me next made my stomach twist. Because apparently my dad hadn't just asked me to chip in. He'd promised them I would. And the amount wasn't just a few bucks. It was $5,000. He told them I was doing great, that I'd definitely want to help Tyler out. And now, they were planning the party around that money, without asking me first. And that was the final straw. Because this wasn't about pride anymore. It wasn't even about money. It was about control. About Dad still believing, deep down, that I was just a background character in Tyler's spotlight. Someone to mine when it was convenient, then discard when the music stopped. But this time, I wasn't the one in the dark. When I left home that night with just a backpack and a bitter taste in my mouth, I didn't feel brave. I felt broken. Angry, sure, But more than that, alone. It wasn't a grand exit. I didn't slam the door or yell or declare some powerful speech. I just slipped out into the cold at 5:14 a.m. while Tyler snored in the next room and Dad's old coffee maker hissed in the kitchen like it always did. I walked to the train station. No Uber. No cab. Just footsteps and frostbite. Every part of me wanted to believe I'd made a mistake. That I'd come back home in a few hours, tail between my legs, and we'd laugh about it over toast. But I didn't go back. And they didn't call. I arrived in Nevada 3 days later, bleary-eyed and stiff from a cramped bus seat next to a guy who insisted I try beef jerky from his backpack. The program was already halfway through its first module, and I was the last to arrive. No welcome party. Just a key, a paper packet, and a map to the shared living quarters in a converted church basement. There were 9 of us total. All misfits in our own way. A girl named Renee who coded like she was composing music, humming while her fingers danced across the keyboard. A guy named Leo who barely talked, but could reverse engineer any device you gave him. A pair of twin brothers who communicated entirely in sarcastic hand gestures. And then me. Aaron, 19, emotionally exhausted, with a laptop so old the ARC key stuck every time I tried to type array. I didn't fit in at first. I was guarded. Defensive. Tense. I kept thinking someone would ask why I left home, why I was here, why I looked like I hadn't slept in weeks. But no one did. Not because they didn't care, but because they all got it. They were all running from something. One night, a few weeks in, I stayed late at the workbench after everyone else had gone to sleep. I was rebuilding a busted prototype that the lead engineer said was unfixable, partly because I needed the practice and partly because I was too wired with anxiety to sleep. Renee wandered in. "Don't tell me you're trying to save Frankendrone," she said, leaning against the doorframe with a cup of peppermint tea. "It's not dead," I muttered. "Just misunderstood." She smiled. "So are we. We talked for a while. Not about the past, just life. Code. Ideas. Possibilities." It was the first real conversation I'd had in weeks that didn't feel like walking on glass. Little by little, I started coming back to life. Our days were intense. Lectures, hands-on projects, weekly demos. We built everything from circuit boards to rudimentary AI systems. Every day, I was exhausted. But a good kind of exhausted. The kind that lets you sleep at night because you know you earned it. I started getting attention from the mentors. Not because I was flashy, because I was obsessed. While others stopped at good enough, I kept digging. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I was trying to prove to myself that I could build something no one could take away. And eventually, I did. We were assigned a capstone project midway through the year. Most people picked safe ideas, educational apps, automation tools, sleek UI concepts. I pitched something different. A bare-bones but powerful predictive algorithm designed to optimize workflow efficiency across platforms. A tool for freelancers and small teams to reclaim time and reduce burnout. Something I knew intimately by now. They told me it was ambitious. They also said I'd never finish it in time. But I didn't have a backup plan. So I went all in. Nights blurred into mornings. I slept under the desk sometimes, ate stale granola bars, and kept one hand on the keyboard while brushing my teeth. Renee called it full goblin mode. But I liked it. It made the noise in my head quiet down. I submitted the prototype at 3:57 a.m. the day it was due. 3 weeks later, we had our final presentation, a demo day attended by local investors, tech leaders, and former alumni. I wore the only button-up I owned. Still had a coffee stain on the cuff from the first week. I stood on stage, palms sweating, heart pounding. And I talked, not just about the product, but the problem. About how burnout kills creativity. About how too many of us are told to figure it out with no real tools or time. I spoke from experience. Not polished. Not rehearsed. Just honest. When I finished, there was a pause. Then someone clapped. Then more. And then the questions started flying. How did it work? Could it scale? Was it already in beta? Was I planning to license it? I was stunned. The same prototype they told me was too much was now being talked about like it might actually go somewhere. Afterward, a man in a navy blazer approached me. His name was Caleb. Ran a small but growing dev firm in San Jose. Said he liked the way I thought. Asked if I wanted to talk about spinning the tool into a proper startup. I nodded. That was all I could manage. We met for coffee the next morning. He brought a notepad and a contract. I brought nothing but my backpack and the same laptop with the broken ARC key. He offered me an accelerator spot. I moved into a shared co-working space 3 weeks later. And just like that, without fanfare or applause, I started to rise. The early months were chaos. I worked out of a converted garage, slept on a cot in the corner, and showered at the community center down the block. I lived on peanut butter sandwiches and YouTube tutorials. My codebase was a mess. My UI design looked like it belonged in 2008. But I kept going. I hired Leo when I finally got seed funding. Renee joined 6 months later. We called the company Backline, a nod to the support musicians rely on to hold everything together behind the scenes. Fitting. We weren't flashy. We were reliable. And people noticed. We hit profitability in our second year. By year 3, we were featured in Tech Orbit Weekly. I was asked to speak on a panel about burnout culture and sustainable growth. I wore the same button-up. Still had the coffee stain. Nobody noticed. Then came the magazine cover. That was a surreal day. I didn't even know we were getting the feature. Caleb called me at 7 a.m. yelling something about, "You made it, you stubborn little," and told me to check the newsstand. There it was. My face. Our logo. Startup of the Year. The quiet revolution of Backline. The article talked about how we were changing the way small teams operate, how our system reduced stress, increased output, and, most importantly, gave people their lives back. They called me a founder with heart. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the magazine. Because the truth was, my heart had been broken years ago. And now, somehow, I'd built something from the wreckage. I sat on a bench outside the newsstand, magazine on my lap, people walking by without a second glance. And all I could think about was that morning 4 years ago, when I left everything behind with nothing but a backpack, a dream, and a heart full of quiet rage. That was the moment I decided to send it. The magazine. The post-it. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want an apology. I just wanted them to feel what I felt for years. Speechless. Silenced. Forgotten. And maybe, just maybe, a little ashamed. But as satisfying as that was, it wasn't the end. Because while I had moved on, they hadn't. And when word got out about the cover, when distant relatives started crawling out of the woodwork with wide smiles and fake warmth, when Tyler suddenly started following me on LinkedIn, that's when the real chaos began. Because apparently, my dad hadn't taken the magazine message as a quiet middle finger. He took it as an invitation. It started with a phone call from an unknown number. I almost didn't pick up. I'd learned the hard way that unknown usually meant either a recruiter who hadn't read my profile or someone asking if I had a moment to talk about your internet service. But something made me answer. Hello. Silence for half a second. Then, Aaron. I froze. I knew that voice. I hadn't heard it in 4 years, but it was unmistakable, deep, casual, like it was permanently leaning back in a chair. My father's voice. I didn't say anything. I just waited. Hey, it's me. Your dad. He said it like I might have confused him with someone else. Wow. I wasn't sure this number still worked. It didn't. Not really. It was one of my old burner numbers tied to a shared line I'd forwarded for business reasons. The fact that he got it meant he'd been looking for it. I saw the magazine, he continued, when I didn't speak. Pretty amazing stuff. Startup of the Year? That's huge. I showed it to a couple of people at the office. Everyone's proud of you. I finally said, you don't know anyone at your office reads Tech Orbit. He laughed, awkwardly. Well, yeah. No, I meant the folks in town. You know, church friends. People at the gym. Everyone's talking. I could feel my jaw tightening. He hadn't reached out when I was sleeping on a cot in a converted storage unit. But now that I had press coverage and maybe a little money in the bank, I was suddenly newsworthy. Anyway, he went on, I was thinking maybe we could reconnect. Water under the bridge and all that. Tyler's wedding is coming up in a few months, and I know things have been rocky, but I figured now that you're doing well, maybe you'd want to help out. Could be a chance to show your face again. There it was. The pitch. The real reason for the call. I almost laughed. Show my face. Like I was a family asset they were dusting off to put in a display case. Help out, I repeated. With what? Well, Tyler and Chelsea were thinking of making the engagement party more of a weekend thing. Rent out a vineyard, bring in catering. Real classy, you know? The family's contributing, but we're a little tight, so if you could. I hung up. Just like that. Didn't say a word. Didn't give him the satisfaction of hearing my voice. I stared at the screen for a long time afterward, heart racing, not out of anger, but something colder. Cleaner. I wasn't 19 anymore. I didn't need to argue. I had something far more powerful than rage now. Leverage. And I was going to use it. Not for some childish outburst or a quick gotcha. No, this was going to be strategic. Surgical. Because if there's one thing I learned building a company from scratch, it's this. Success isn't just the best revenge. It's the best weapon. That night, I pulled up everything I could find about Tyler's engagement. Chelsea's social media was a goldmine. She posted updates like she was running a PR campaign, venue tours, dress fittings, themed mood boards, countdowns. Apparently, they'd settled on an actual vineyard for the weekend event, complete with guest cabins, floral arches, a custom hashtag, and some minor TikTok sponsorship deal from a friend of hers who ran a bridal page. It was a lot. And expensive. From what I gathered, they were banking on the family chipping in to make it happen. Which meant one thing. They'd already made promises they couldn't keep. And that was opportunity. I called Renee. "Tell me you're not inviting me to some weird coder retreat again," she said as she picked up. "I have a better offer," I replied. "You want to help me destroy a wedding?" There was a pause. Then, "God, I've missed you." Over the next 2 weeks, we got to work. The plan wasn't about sabotage in the cartoon sense. No pulled plugs or crashed cakes. That's messy, emotional, predictable. No, I wanted precision. Something that wouldn't just ruin a party. I wanted to ruin their narrative. See, for years, I'd been written out of the family story. The silent older brother. The one who left. The one who abandoned them while golden boy Tyler grew into the man of the house. But that narrative only worked as long as I stayed quiet. Now, I had a platform. I had a voice. And I had receipts. I started by reaching out to my cousin Olivia. She was the only one from the old days who ever reached out after I left. We hadn't talked in over a year, but when I called, she picked up like we were still teenagers sneaking soda into movie theaters. "Holy crap," she said. "I didn't think you even used phones anymore." "I need your help," I said, "and I need you to keep it quiet." I told her everything. Not just the plan, yet, but the truth. About the laptop. About leaving. About the voicemail Dad left. About the favor he asked me in that email. She listened the whole time. Then she let out a slow breath. "Jesus," she whispered. "You were always the quiet one, but I didn't know it was that bad." "You were a kid," I said. "No one expected you to notice." "I did notice," she said softly. "I just didn't know what to do." We met for coffee the next morning. She filled in the blanks on everything I didn't know. The real state of my family's finances. The behind-the-scenes drama with Tyler's wedding. How Dad had used my name to reassure vendors that the money would come through. That, our successful son Aaron, was backing the whole thing. That's when it clicked. He hadn't just promised me as a contributor. He'd used me as collateral. That changed everything. Now, it wasn't just personal. It was fraud. Not legally, maybe, but morally? Game on. Renee and I started crafting a website, simple, elegant, and vaguely wedding-related. We called it Backline Moments, posing as a boutique consulting firm that specialized in event support systems. Basically, a fake sister brand of our real company, but with enough crossover to look legit. Then we reached out to the vineyard. As potential investors, Renee handled the call, pretending to be our lead event coordinator. She asked questions about their capacity, vendors, cancellation policies, and most importantly, pending reservations. And just like that, we got what we needed. The booking was under my dad's name. Confirmed, but only partially paid. The full amount was due 30 days before the event. Which meant one thing. The clock was ticking. We didn't need to cancel the event. We just needed to wait. And then, when the deadline passed and the payment didn't come through, we'd step in. With an offer. Not to ruin the party, but to buy it out. Completely. Same date. Same space. Same vendors. Just, not for Tyler. The idea was insane. Petty. Vindictive. And I'd never felt more alive. But I wasn't done. Because the real blow wasn't going to come from taking the venue. It was going to come from the speech I planned to give the night before the engagement party. At a charity gala my company was sponsoring. In their hometown. With media in attendance. And every local name on the guest list. Including some of the same people invited to the wedding. The topic? The cost of invisible labor. What happens when quiet people get loud? I wasn't going to name names. I didn't have to. I was going to tell my story, clean, raw, and clear. Not out of bitterness, but out of truth. The vineyard called my father exactly 30 days before the engagement party. I knew because I timed it. That morning, I sat at my desk in the backline office, sipping black coffee while Renee gave me a subtle thumbs up from across the room. She'd just received the automated notice from the venue confirming that their deadline had passed. No final payment. No contingency plan. The entire weekend event, catering, cabins, floral setup, the vineyard itself, was now back on the market. Within 2 hours, the venue got a new call. From me. Well, technically, from our legal rep. We submitted a formal request to rent out the entire space. Same date, same weekend. Payment in full, up front, along with a generous, early bonus for any vendors willing to stick with us. They signed immediately. Why wouldn't they? We were organized, we had a business front, and we paid on time. And just like that, the rug was gone. The wedding weekend they'd planned for months? Ours now. Renee called it the Corporate Wellness Retreat. A bit theatrical, but the name wasn't important. What mattered was the location, the audience, the timing, and the message. Meanwhile, my cousin Olivia had quietly started planting seeds. A story here, a comment there. Subtle nudges in group chats that Tyler wasn't as financially stable as he claimed. That maybe their family was spreading itself thin. That someone should probably ask Aaron what he thought of all this. But I didn't respond. Not yet. I waited. Because the real play came the night before. The gala. Backline had grown rapidly in the last few months. Enough that we started expanding into mental health and sustainable work models. We partnered with a local nonprofit in our hometown, Quiet Forward, an initiative to help underfunded students access tech tools and mentorship. It felt full circle. And conveniently, the charity gala for that initiative happened to fall the night before Tyler's canceled engagement party. And it just so happened to be in the exact same town, held at the Civic Arts Center. Same people invited, same families, same social circles. All I had to do was show up. They billed me as the keynote speaker. The title, The Invisible Cost of Being the Reliable One. I stepped up to the mic in front of a crowd of maybe 120. Familiar faces filled the room. Old neighbors, teachers, even some of Dad's old colleagues. Tyler and Chelsea weren't there, but I didn't expect them to be. Dad was. Sat in the back, flanked by 2 men I didn't recognize. He looked like he hadn't slept. Good. I took a breath. And I spoke. I told them about a teenager who taught himself how to code on library computers, who saved up for months to buy a laptop he needed for school, who came home one day to find it gone, sold, so his younger brother could have a gaming rig to unwind. I didn't name names, but I saw the room shift. Eyes widened. Necks turned. Some gasps, some exchanged looks. I told them about leaving home, about sleeping on couches, about working late into the night on machines held together with tape and borrowed parts, about being told to figure it out and doing just that, while no one bothered to ask if he'd even made it out alive. I paused. Then I held up a copy of the Tech Orbit magazine, the same one I'd mailed to Dad. I figured it out, I said simply. The applause wasn't thunderous. It was thoughtful, slow, genuine. Afterward, people came up to shake my hand, to say they'd never heard me speak before, to tell me they had kids who'd gone through the same thing, that they were sorry. Dad didn't come up. He walked out halfway through the reception, which was fine, because the next morning, he woke up to chaos. Apparently, Chelsea and her family had shown up at the vineyard that morning for an early rehearsal. Chelsea in full bridal mood, her parents carrying garment bags, some of the bridesmaids already sipping mimosas, only to find a security guard at the entrance asking if they were part of the backline corporate retreat. They weren't on the list. Chelsea lost it. There was yelling, screaming, phone calls, tears. I wasn't there for it, obviously, but Olivia was, and she sent me a voice note that I've saved to this day. It was chaos in the background, Chelsea sobbing, her mother demanding to speak to the owner, Tyler trying to call my father, and my father yelling into his phone something about, "This isn't possible. I guaranteed it." But the best part? The voice note ends with Olivia whispering, "They just realized who owns the company. They just realized it's you." That night, I checked my inbox. There were 4 new emails from Dad. I opened the first one. "Aaron, we need to talk." The second, "You've embarrassed this family." The third, "You need to fix this. Now." The fourth, "Please." I didn't respond, but I did forward them all to Renee. She wrote back 2 words. "We won." I went on with the retreat. We didn't cancel the weekend. We hosted a real event, talks, team building, panels on mental health and the tech space. Chelsea's florist still showed up. She'd taken the bonus and moved all the floral arrangements into our event space. They looked great. I gave one of the bouquets to Olivia. Back home, Tyler tried to spin it, claimed the venue double-booked, that it was a freak error. But people talk. Vendors talk. Guests compare notes. Word spread fast. Everyone knew. Chelsea called off the engagement 2 weeks later. Apparently, she found out Tyler had lied about how much money he actually had, and that her parents had quietly reached out to me about a misunderstanding, only to get silence. Dad's reputation took a hit. In a small town, that kind of embarrassment clings. The man who once bragged about raising an entrepreneur was suddenly the guy who used his son's name to promise money he didn't have. My brother unfollowed me on every platform. I laughed, not because I wanted him to suffer, but because for once, I didn't care what he thought. He was just another background character now. And me? I kept building. Backline expanded to 3 new cities. Our tools were adopted by several nonprofit orgs. I was invited to speak at conferences, not as Aaron, the guy with the tragic past, but as a founder, a builder, a leader. I even bought a house. Nothing fancy, just mine. I filled it with books, coffee, and light. No photos from home. No post-its on my laptop. Except one. It sits right on the monitor stand. Yellow. Faded. Scrawled in my handwriting. Figure it out. Because I did. And now? They finally know it too. They sold my future to buy him comfort. But I built something they could never afford and made sure they watched me live it.